Let's catch you up on some of the other stories that should be on your radar today. It's time for Rapid Fire. Here to break down the headlines are Morgan Brennan, Robert Frank, and Contessa Brewer. Welcome, everybody. First up, we're going to talk some Roku today. Users may have noticed a new feature. The company has apparently introduced interactive pop-up ads laid over related commercials that air on cable or live TV. Take a look at this image from Cord Cutters News, which I love that that's a site. But anyway, it shows a pop-up ad for a Geico-sponsored program while a Geico ad is airing. So the thing to understand about Ghost Town there is it's a sponsored program. Anyway, Roku's CEO says he believes the company is really in the advertising business, not the hardware business, and investors love it. The stock, as you guys know, is up more than 200% this year. Wow.
I think this is really remarkable, don't you think? Because it has been a hardware business, and their systems are in these new TVs that are getting sold. I'm wondering, is this just that they can boost what they're getting for ad rates by working with these partners, or potentially, is there a revenue sharing deal that comes into play when people are buying directly off their Roku?
Yeah.
You know, we talk about winners and losers in the streaming wars. Roku, clearly, at least so far, has been the big winner. Yes, you got the hardware piece of it. You've also got the platform and the services piece of it. They have the Roku channel. They're also aggregating all of the other streaming apps right now, too. Yep. And, of course, now the targeted ads. This is, like, truly targeted. Like, they know what you're watching, how you like to watch it, and now they're, like, being very innovative with how they're going after you with it.
It's interesting also, this is double ad. So you're seeing an ad on top of an ad, which is awful. And secondly, I thought the whole streaming purpose was to get rid of advertising, and it's not. I think it's clear from this that even Netflix, even Disney, we're going to start seeing these ads. I love Sirius Radio, but there are ads on Sirius Radio, and I'm paying. It's like I'm paying not to have ads, and I still have ads.
Hulu, too.
Yeah.
There's at least a couple of options there, but first of all, I've actually heard the argument that this is bearish for Facebook and Google because so much advertising is migrating to streaming TV that it's going to undermine a big part of their attraction, which is also why they've tried to make their own TV platforms. For Roku, this is definitely a glimpse of the future. We're going to see more and more of this.
Probably more going to migrate away from cable toward this, as opposed to
But before,
Google
there was only one game in town. And so if you think about it, if the eyeballs are moving to streaming, all of a sudden you do have a new way of reaching this whole cohort who's not watching.
If viewer response is good.
Right.
If you get metrics that show viewer response and they're actually clicking on those ads,
which is to impulse buys, though. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this. Like, you're sitting there with the remote and I like that. And forget giving my kids the remote because we'll all have Hot Wheels everywhere. You know?
We need some kid controls as they roll this out. Moving on, the street is pretty bullish on SmileDirectClub, and that stock is down more than 30% since it went public just a couple of weeks ago. 9 firms initiated coverage today, each with a buy or equivalent rating. JP Morgan is the most bullish with a $31 price target. It was also one of the lead underwriters on the IPO. And by the way, most of the price targets on the street are below the IPO price of $23, and that's not enough to boost the stock. Even today, the shares are down 5%, guys. They're below $14 now.
Yeah, a lot of these outperform. If you look at the actual price targets, they're like 18 as opposed to the IPO, which is 36, and not too far above the current 12 level. And you've got this issue with the American Dental Association and the Orthodontics Association, and
you had a short seller citing that to say, like, you got to be careful. You
last
know,
week. So even the most bullish reports from the analysts on this were like, it could go up to 14 or 18,
or 31 if you're JP Morgan.
Yeah, and I think SmileDirectClub. I mean, their first day of trading, it was one of the worst performances for an IPO so far this year, which really says something, since IPO performance has been, the worst since at least 1995, according to Goldman. Very similar scenario, though, to Uber, where you have consensus analyst ratings right now, overweight, 64% implied upside, and yet investors
still don't.
Not buying it.
That's why I love the public markets, because everyone in Silicon Valley was bullish consensus on Smile, or wherever. I'm using Silicon Valley as a proxy. All the sell-side analysts on Wall Street are happy to give you the upside, but there's only one way to really get the truth about what everybody thinks about this stock, and it's to watch how it actually trades.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not very good.
Speaking of the truth, can I just say about those claims that have been filed by the orthodontics and of course they're upset about it. It's taking business away from them. What are they supposed to say?
Absolutely. And that's one of the challenges of having doctors being the entrenched industry is normally you would trust doctors on something like this. In this case, you don't know who to believe, because there will probably be some cases where it worked out terrifically. And there will probably be some cases where it wasn't appropriate, it wasn't handled well by the teledentistry system, and somebody got hurt. So there's going to be a mix of outcomes, and it's going to be tough to figure out, is this right or is this wrong?
I think the only issue that Wall Street's trying to figure out is what is the moat around this business? How unique is SmileDirect, and how much penetration can they really have in their total market, especially with all these copycats coming up? But let's stick with IPOs and away, because there's a new report highlighting just how bad a real estate bet could be for WeWork. After purchasing, remember the iconic Lord & Taylor flagship building in Manhattan? This was a big deal at the time, and they did this as part of a joint venture earlier this year. But WeWork signed a hefty lease to become the sole tenant. This is nearly a 700,000 square foot pace, and it was going to be their headquarters. Now they're scrambling to do damage control. They've scrapped the IPO. They've ousted co-founder Adam Neumann. And they're on the hook for this rent to the tune of $70 million a year.
Yeah, this is another building where the systemic risk is sort of all encapsulated in the microcosm of this building. So they bought this building for $850 million, which was high for that location, that type of building.
And per square foot, really high.
WeWork then subleased leased the building for over $100 a square foot. Normally, it's about 85 to 87 in that area. So now they're trying to find someone to fill that space at that market rate, and they're not finding it. So then the question is, what happens? JPM has a $600 million loan against the building. You've got these outside investors who are also the co-owners, along with Adam Neumann. It's just a mess.
Could have been. They were looking at Amazon, remember? But
Amazon
possibly be a tenant
could still be looking at it. There are other tech. Now, look, it's an attractive space for somebody, but like anything, there's a price, and the price is likely going to be below what they're paying. And so then, do they eat that? Right. And how do they get out of the lease? And that's a problem.
This really speaks to the conflicts of interest that were rife with this company coming into this, and with the founder and now former CEO, still chairman, Adam Neumann, just, how all of these different vehicles were integrated and what it meant for investors to peel that apart. All still very legal, but
yes,
conflict of interest, unethical, arguably.
Well, but also it doesn't do you a lot of good. If you're so tied up with one company that you've got you're exposed to a mortgage on one side and a business thing on the other, it starts to compound your problems. This was the quote I love from the New York Post, from a source, granted, who said the only option for them to get out of this is if they go bankrupt. So in other words, if they have to, take another loss in order to get the IPO out the door, what have you, they've got to do something to start coming up with
Now, the good
funding.
thing is the landlord, the owner of the building in this case, is also tied to WeWork. So it's Adam Neumann, it's Rohn, it's other people that have co-invested in WeWork.
Yeah.
So they're going to be pretty lenient on the terms. But yeah, it's a long-term lease, an elevated rate, and they just were not disciplined about how they were buying and how they were taking
And this
space.
is happening in a non-recessionary environment.
Right.
Imagine what the business model looks like when things,
it just points to that existential model. Does it make sense if you're in the business of long-term investments and turning around short-term leases? There is a disconnect there.
And it still hasn't been resolved. 1,000%. Okay, finally, no. We're not getting to the horn just yet. We got to talk some GE. And we have Morgan here especially to do that. GE is freezing pensions for nearly 20,000 employees with salaried benefits. This an effort to cut its debt and reduce its pension deficit by up to $8 billion. They have debt totaling nearly $106 billion, including the finance arm. And the pension plan has already been closed to new employees since 2012. So I think, societally speaking, huge issues every time we see these headlines. People say it's over, we're all doing 401k plans. Not so sure. I think there's been a huge backlash among people who are furious at having lost this sense of protection in retirement. And so what's the practical impact, Morgan, you think of this for GE?
I think this is a company that has been looking to raise cash. This is its number one priority under CEO and Chairman Larry Culp, since he took the helm a little over a year ago, to shore up the finances and to pay down debt. This is one more move that takes you in that, I guess, more positive direction from a financial standpoint. You mentioned the key there. Pension plans have been closed to new entrants since 2012. You had these 401k plans in place. However, when you look at their liabilities, the current pension plans, the fact that they do pay out something like $500,000, for retired employees over the course of their lifetimes, still one of the biggest liabilities.
So how many of them are going to be affected by these changes? Because it says these are for the buyouts they're offering to some people are only if you haven't started to draw on those pensions yet. So there's some nuance here in terms of how many of these people are even going to be affected.
Yeah, so people that are already, I think, getting payouts are not going to be affected. You've got about another 100,000 former employees that are going to be offered pension buyouts. You got another 20,000 workers as well that are going to see their pension plans frozen. So it's still a fraction of the total. But again, it's going to help streamline the finances of this company at a time where low interest rates are absolutely a drag.
And hurting them more and more. And I know, companies have to do this, but again, I still think,
tough.
yes.
It's
and
tough.
people, the lack of security in terms of retirement is a major, major theme. Let's lighten the mood, shall we? Tesla says it's working on allowing owners to fully customize their horns and other vehicle sounds. This is in response to new regulations here in the U.S. and in the EU requiring these cars to emit a sound when they're traveling slowly in order to alert pedestrians. So, in other words, Contessa, and what I love about Tesla is you can wake up in the morning and you have entirely new features on your car if you've kind of enabled the right plans. This would allow people to use a horn directionally, right? So you can honk backwards, so to speak, for one, right, which is useful. But also so that when you're, tell me if I'm wrong. So if there's cars in traffic and a Tesla's one of them, instead of emitting some kind of like engine sound, they're going to be able to emit what exactly?
Like whooshing air, for instance.
Right.
Or you could have the clopping sound from Monty Python, the movie. You could also
the coconuts, which one of the greatest comedies of all time. Let's be clear.
Okay, and also, what about the goat? There's a goat sound that you can do. But here's what I'm thinking: if you're slowly stuck in traffic in a Tesla and you need to make a noise, what I really want to hear is the sense of just the herd mentality, the fact that you're stuck and being funneled through, and it would sound something like this.
Like a cow mooing, maybe? Yeah. See, it's that ESP stuff we were talking about earlier.
I think there's already too much rudeness and road rage on the road, so I go back to our more genteel days of auto travel.
What would Robert's
do you remember what they call the greatest ad of all time, the Grey Poupon ad, when the guy pulls up in the Rolls Royce and he says, do we have it?
Pardon me.
So, if you pulled up to somebody, and imagine hearing that.
I could totally see you with that.
I love that.
How polite and lovely would that be in New York City?
I could totally see you with that.
Morgan, Musk is saying to people that you will be able, he said you could like personalize it to a favorite song of yours or something, right? Like it's not another question we could all be picking our favorite
I feel
sound.
like a woman.
No, yours.
Is that your karaoke song? Well, I am going to, of course, go with a rocket launch.
Yeah. Perfect.
5,
Perfect.
4, 3,
That's when you know Morgan Brennan is in traffic around.
I think Elon Musk would approve.
I think this would be extremely annoying.
But Tesla needs, in my opinion, they need to focus more on what's happening inside the car. Like, who wants a credit card key sitting on this little notch that every time you turn a corner, it slides off and underneath the seat, and you're like, wait a minute, where did that thing go? I don't know where that is.
All I know is that, listen, I understand having a little bit of fun with it. I love that. But if you're in traffic, and whether you're a pedestrian or if you're another car, and this starts being like personalized ringtones, I'm so glad we got out of that phase. I don't want to go back into that.
What could be worse than horns? Horns are so bad.
No one's honking.
That's true.
It's just to give you some ambient noise. All right, we got to go. Guys, thank you all. Morgan, Contessa, and Robert. Now I'll know if you're in traffic around me.